Hello everyone, it is Dr. Kane Jr. bringing you news that is as unbiased as possible. The reason I have this world map open is, well, one, I'm giving you world news, and two, the United States as of 2020 has officially decided to put 60%, yes, 60% of its navy off the coast of China. Is it unprovoked? No. China did cyber attack America before, but what's worse, some cyber warfare or an all-out war with China? Why? Because it would crush the economy of America, China, and basically every other country involved in this. Why? Because one, China would cut off all business that goes on in China that's American, because it's a lot cheaper to buy products from China than it is to make it in America. The downside to that, even though it's cheaper to make things in China, is the fact that it causes unemployment. Now, China has a very good economy, a debt to GDP ratio of about 43%, which means they basically sell twice as much as they buy. They sell actually a little bit more than twice as much. On the other hand, America has 103% debt to GDP ratio, which means they buy twice as much as they sell, which is bad, very, very bad. Now, people use a debate that China has 160% debt to GDP ratio because it happens to be predicted by some United States debt analysts. Of course, the United States is going to say that someone who's probably going to be an enemy in the future has a worse economy than them. It's a morale booster. Now, getting back to the main subject here, the reason I'm pulling up the world map again is to show you who the allies of the United States and China would actually be if they did go to war. Well, first off, the United States, let's look at her neighbor, Canada. Canada is a part of NATO. They do have a mixed socialist economy, yes, but they're still part of NATO. Will they side with the United States? Slight U.S. backing, probably not going to get involved in the war. And of course, most of Europe is going to back the United States, not go to the war. The only European country that will probably side with America is the UK, and that's it. Of course, you're going to have Asian countries that are angry with China that are going to side with you, but it works both ways. You can have angry European countries that will support China. Now, the Chinese allies. The Chinese have a big money connection with Africa, most African countries, my mistake. These are oil deals. Now, if you were a poor African nation, are you really going to betray your trade partner over America? No. Why? Because China is the only thing keeping you and your regime in power. So, most of Africa will side with China. How big of a backing will this be? None at all, basically. China also will have slight Russian backing because America just will not leave Russia alone. Every day America comes up with some new thing about Putin that obviously pisses off the Russians. So Russians are going to have slight Chinese backing, probably going to stay out of the war, more than likely. Now to get to the real allies, and I actually have a picture here for you. North Korea and South Korea. North Korea is going to side with China, undoubtedly, because China is the only thing that's keeping South Korea from rolling over North Korea. North Koreans are also zealots for their nation. They blame America and South Koreans for everything that goes wrong. There's a famine caused by the greed of their leader, South Koreans' fault. The South Koreans will back America. However, the question is, how much will this backing be worth? The South Koreans, they do have a strong military, but not compared to the Chinese. As Joseph Stalin once said, there is quality in quantity. I know Joseph Stalin lost his regime, but look at how long he stayed in power before eventually, leading up to Gorbachev getting in office. So South Korea, really all they're going to do is maybe base a couple U.S. forward operating bases in return for help later against the North Koreans, and maybe some, bomber aid, use of airports, all that good stuff, money. The Americans will have Taiwan on board with them. Why? Because Taiwan originally controlled China, and then the leader of China, before it became communist, fled to that island, and it became Taiwan. So, for all intents and purposes, China, yes, they used to be part of Taiwan, except it was called China, including the Taiwanese islands. The problem is, the U.S. is going to put their 60% of their military off the coast of Southeast Asia. Well, China in general. Most of it will be in Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. 60% of your Navy. Look at what the Japanese were able to do during World War II to the American Navy. That was across the Atlantic Ocean. Imagine that with stealth bombers. Yeah. Plus, the Chinese have submarines. People always say that China has a weak Navy. However, you cannot judge a Navy by how many aircraft carriers they have. Yes, they can move better troops, but what happens if you're on that aircraft carrier and you have a grid up trying to protect this, and out of nowhere a stealth bomber comes and drops a bomb in the middle of the deck? Yeah, you just lost, let's say, 20% of your aircraft. Which 20% on a small boat, let's say you have 100, just for argument's sake, 100 aircraft. That's still 20 aircraft, and each aircraft costs a couple $1,000,000. So this is logistical damage to the country. Now, do I agree that it's a semi-smart idea to put our Navy off the coast of China? Yes, China will be a threat in the future as they continue a military rise. The only problem is, America apparently still thinks we're in the Cold War. No. See, we don't need nuclear submarines at this point. We can go back to the old diesel clunkers. I know it sounds stupid, however, you could be using that nuclear material for much better things, like nuclear power plants and things of the sort. You don't need those nuclear submarines. Obviously, you want to keep a few. Do we need as many as we have? No. We can also begin to have a conference like another Geneva conference and begin to remove nuclear weapons from all arsenals and building of them and all that, like we're doing with chemical weapons. And we can recycle that uranium and plutonium because it's not burnt out yet. We can use that in nuclear power plants and power America and half of the world while we're at it, just with how many nuclear bombs that the world currently has. So that's all I have for today. I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll keep you posted.